We're live now.
Okay. Hello, I warmly welcome you to our 71st webinar by the Academy of Space Renaissance International. My name is Sabine Heinz, and I'm the person responsible for our webinars, together with Adriano Ottino. And on this 4th of November, I'm really delighted that you have come to join us. And today we have a really special topic, and we have several special guests. We will welcome Frank White. Hello.
Hello, Sabine.
And we will welcome Dr. Stanley Rosen.
Hello, Sabine.
Yes. And also later on will join us Kevin Russell and Gregory Bard. And as you know, the 17 Sustainable Development Goals adopted by the United Nations represent noble aspirations that would change, that would change the world if achieved. And in this webinar, the Human Space Program team will discuss a proposed HSP simulation model, a computer-based tool for investigation of the implications of migration of human civilization into space. The model can be used to explore the possible impacts of the proposed 18th SDG in achieving the other 17th SDGs. The team will also consider how building a model brings apparent adversaries together to achieve a common purpose, and why planet Earth needs for this reconciliation to happen urgently. I also would like to welcome Adriano Ottino. Achso, and the topic is simulating space migration. And I also would like to welcome Adriano Ottino. He's one of our vice presidents and former president of Space Renaissance International, and one of the founders of SRI. Hello, Adriano.
Hi, welcome very much to all our guests. And I'm very, very eager to listen to this presentation because this tool, I think it's a fundamental tool for our work on trying to shape a better future for humanity.
Thank you. And I also have seen that Gregory Bar is joining us now. Hello and welcome. Before we start, I would like to introduce our speakers. I would start with I would start with my list with Kevin Russell. He is a versatile innovator in simulation technology and space development. This professional combines expertise and medical simulation R&D with pioneering work and virtual reality dating back to VR's or virtual reality's inception in 1990. His diverse career spans healthcare, space technology, and entertainment, including notable achievements as a producer of the acclaimed film In the Company of Men from 1997, as a simulation learning consultant specializing in medical operations and conscious sedation. He contributed to advancing healthcare education. His space industry involvement includes serving investing in green propulsion technology, a new space business plan coach, leading a New Mexico spaceport visitors experience RFP team, and participating in space advocacy through the Alliance Space Development Team and International Space Settlement Design Competition. Beyond his primary work, he maintains active involvement in environmental causes as a climate exchange and serves on his local water quality task force as a member. Besides gardening and landscape design, his creative pursuits include spatial and audio engineering, complemented by work as a multi-instrumentalist and boat plane building. So when he enters, then we can welcome him. And Gregory Barr is an experienced financial and IT consultant, leading multi-year strategic planning, quality assurance financial analysis initiatives, and managing information technology programs and portfolios. Worked internationally for UNDP and in the United States for numerous federal agencies. His expertise includes the application of balance, scorecard, activity-based costing, financial modeling, systems designs, business process re-engineering, process improvement, and change management. Deep experiment with IT system development and deployment, including infrastructure provisioning, enterprise operations, software development, and custom graphic user interface design. He served as a C-suite level with non-profit organizations such as Action and Smoking and Health. And the contact is in culture of the imagination and the L5 Society and the National Space Society. And he is currently a member of the board of directors for the Human Space Program Incorporation. Dr. Stanley Rosen has
Sabina,
had...
if I could interrupt, feel free to cut mine short. I gave you much too much information.
Okay,
stop after
you
the
don't
first
want to give
sentence.
this information, okay? Yeah, you
Okay,
wrote a
you-
lot. Then you can make it short. And Frank, you also don't, shall I read something short from you? Frank White is a magna cum laude graduate of Harvard College, a member of Phi Beta Kappa, and a Rhodes Scholar. He earned a Master of Philosophy in Politics from Oxford University. And White's book, The Overview Effect, Space Exploration and Human Evolution, is considered the first of three in the Overview Trilogy. He is considered by many to be a seminal work in the space field. Overview, a film based largely on his insights, has had some 9 million plays on Vimeo. He has also authored or co-authored additional books and topics as diverse as climate change, and Zen Buddhism. Frank White is a faculty member of Kepler Space University. He is also the co-founder and president of the Human Space Program, a non-profit organization dedicated to sustainable, ethical, and inclusive evolution into the solar ecosystem. So, now we got it. I know it's sometimes a lot, but the audience wants to know with whom we are speaking, and I think it's kind of respect for our speakers to present them well. You deserve it. Okay, I would say, Frank, the stage is yours. You can open the slides and you can start. While you are doing so, I would like to welcome people from Space Renaissance, from Chris Midley from Vulcan, and then we have from Ireland people watching from Madison, Wisconsin in the US, and and from the Netherlands. Thank you for being here with us.
Yeah, before I pull up the presentation, I would like to say Stan Rosen is an distinguished contributor to the whole field of space exploration. And I don't know what we'd do without him. So I'm not going to get started because he's also very modest. Anyway.
Yes, I wanted to read it, but he refused me to do so.
Yeah. I also want to do a shout out to Allison Matos, who's a key member of our team, who could not be here today, and also to David and Laura Peterson of Ventana Systems. You'll find out more about that later. And finally, to Omar Sanad, who was key in introducing us to Ventana Systems. And so let us begin the presentation. I do want to say this is a team product, the presentation. And after I finish it, I would like to have my team members comment because there's always something that I leave out. So here we go. Let's share screen. All right, here we go. I am assuming everyone can see the screen. I will now make it full screen.
Yeah.
We go. Okay. The title is simulating, let's do full screen. The title is indeed Simulating Space Migration. And we're going to relate it to a topic that's dear to the hearts of the human space program and Space Renaissance International, and well over 100 other space-oriented organizations. We are petitioning the United Nations to add an 18th Sustainable Development Goal to the 17 that already exist. And we believe, in fact, that it would be the most important thing the UN could do in order to achieve these goals. And that 18th Sustainable Development Goal, or SDG, would be space for all. So we're going to talk about that, and then we're going to talk about how our simulation model is yet another way of looking at the SDGs, of looking at the future, and of understanding the potential impact of space migration. And by that, we mean advancing human civilization into a larger ecosystem. So let's get started. It's all a matter of perspective. And as many of you know, I have done a lot of work on the overview effect, the impact of seeing the Earth from orbit, a suborbital hop, or from the moon. The overview effect is about perspective, how you see the Earth. Right behind me is a way of seeing the Earth that was really dramatically portrayed in 1968 when the Apollo 8 astronauts circled the moon. Well, I want to ask a question. Are the SDGs a wall of blocks? That's how we portray them for the most part. And I have a problem with that. And I want to say, no, they're not. They are what they state, they're goals. The SDGs are goals, and they're actually aspirations. I think Sabine said that at the beginning. They're aspirations for humanity to address what I would call subsystems within the context of larger whole systems. The whole point of achieving these goals is to improve life within these subsystems, both on Earth, but as we will show you, beyond. And we think they should be seen in a new way. And that's both emotionally and cognitively. Cognitively, we have to conceive of them in a new way, but we need the emotion in order to spur us to action. So let's go back to this statement that the SDGs are subsystems of a whole series of larger whole systems. And let's start with poverty. The SDG is to end poverty. And to end poverty implies that we currently live within a system or a subsystem that allows poverty. What does that mean? It allows some people to be very poor. We want to change that. What does it mean to end hunger? It means we currently live in a system that tolerates some people being hungry. We want to change that. What does it mean to improve healthcare or quality healthcare for all? It means, and you're getting my drift, some people don't have good healthcare, and we want to change that. And it's the same with education. We want quality education for all. What does that mean? It means that some people don't get a quality education, and we want to change that. This chart, nor does the wall of blocks, show that these 4 and all 17 of the goals are interactive. If one changes, the others will change. If we eliminated poverty, not as many people would be hungry because people would be able to buy food. If we eliminated hunger, people would be healthier because they would have food and nutrition. If people were healthy, they'd be able to get an education more easily, and that would then go back to poverty. They might be able to pull themselves out of poverty, and so on. This is just 4 of the goals. And what it shows is if one of them is achieved, it's going to have an impact on the others. And you got to think about the 18th. If space for all happens, and we'll talk more about space for all later, it's going to have a dramatic cascading effect on all of the other SDGs. Let's start with the one we know, the whole system that we know, the Terran whole system. That's the Earth. This is the iconic blue marble. It was seen it was a photograph taken by the Apollo 17 crew on their journey to the moon. It's a profound, this photograph has had a big impact. We see Africa, we see the Arabian Peninsula, we see Madagascar, we see Antarctica. We see something the astronauts saw, and it was kind of startling to them. No borders, no boundaries. I mean, it's pretty clear most of us would know this is Africa, but where's Nigeria? Do you know? Where is South Africa? Do you know? So we see what the astronauts see, and that we attempt to communicate. No borders, no boundaries. And look at the clouds and the move. You can almost see the oceans moving. It's a dynamic system, constantly changing. And the SDGs are down there, or the systems that we're trying to change are down there, but you can't see them. So how do we present this? How do we communicate what we're talking about when we talk about the 17 SDGs and then the potential impact of the 18th? So a few of my slides are going to be, how do we talk about that? And of course, I have been a big advocate of having the astronauts talk about it because they've been there, they've done that. They have intuitively understood a lot of what we're talking about just by getting that new overview effect perspective. So I always like to play an astronaut commentary when I give a talk.
Did it give you a sense of purpose, not just for you, but for us humans?
Maybe it's semantics, but rather than a purpose, we had a responsibility.
Okay.
And one of the great responsibilities I think we have is to protect it. Like I said, we've got a little baby that's trusting us with everything. And it's, you can really stretch that metaphor that this baby is so full of potential. This baby is going to grow.
Yeah.
And it's going to take care of us someday. We've got to do everything we can to make sure that it has what it needs to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So when you look at the Earth from that vantage point, I know others have said this, you don't see the borders. You don't see political borders. You hardly see geographical borders. You just have this sense of, I don't want this to go away, and I don't want to be the only one to see this. Because as I said, I grieved over how I was going to tell people about this, to bring home what I was feeling. In fact, I think my first experience looking at all of that was, again, on the shuttle flight. And I remember at one point, my vision became blurry. And I panicked a little bit, like, what's going, I want to see that it's going to go away. And, rubbed my eyes, and I discovered I was actually tearing up. And in microgravity, right, the way fluid behaves, it just balls up on your eyes. That was the emotional response I was having unknowingly. I just was, feeling something as I was staring at this view of the whole thing. And it moved me to tears unknowingly.
That's Tracy Caldwell Dyson. She's an active astronaut. I interviewed her in 2019 at Johnson Space Center. She actually just returned from the International Space Station. And as far as I know, she's continuing her career. And she really brings out the feeling that we need to have to move our governments and ourselves to achieve these aspirational goals that we have. But now, how do we present the cognitive side? How do we get that over to people? Well, we've been working on it. Greg and Kevin, Stan and I, and Dave and Laura, all of our team, we've been working on it. We're not quite there yet, but we're going to share with you some of the efforts we're making and what we hope will come of it. So let's move on. This is an effort I made. The team is not responsible for this. I asked ChatGPT 4o to show me a system dynamics view of the 17 goals, and also to put space at the center, and it is right there with climate action. And I give Chat some credit for showing space at the center and then all the connections, but it's really not dynamic, and it doesn't really show how, as one of the goals is achieved or as we approach it, it changes and has an impact on the others. So it's a start, and we'll keep working at it. I also asked Chat to, or DALL-E 3, to show me the achievement of the 17 goals, which is on the left as you look at this graphic. And in Chat's mind, this is it. This is the world where all the goals are achieved. It's utopia, obviously. And then I said, well, what if we don't achieve all of the goals? And it showed something a little different. And it's not all bad. I mean, the city in the background looks like it's doing pretty well, and there's some greenery there, but the closer you get to the front, the worse it is. And I don't know if this is a good way of presenting it, but it's a start. And I think it's part of what we're attempting to do, is to give a little bit more life to how these goals work, or how they could work, I should say. And you notice, I don't remember the prompt I gave it, but in the background, there is a whole Earth on the left. And I think maybe that was an effort to bring the 18th SDG in. It's not quite what we want, but again, it's a start. Okay, want to go back a little bit and want to give a little credit to Greg here, who originally developed some of the slides I'm going to show you. We have to go back in time a bit to talk about how does a model help us here? And in particular, how does a systems model help us? And we hearken back to a time in the early 70s when a group called the Club of Rome commissioned MIT, a group at MIT, to run a series of simulation models showing what would happen to the Earth with unlimited growth. They ran these models, and almost every simulation led to what they called overshoot and collapse. In other words, the Earth couldn't stand unlimited growth, and essentially society collapsed. So that led to a book called The Limits to Growth, which was highly influential. And interestingly enough, it was built on the basis of something called a world model. Interestingly enough, people have continued to follow this thinking. And recently, a group of the people who worked on that original world model came out and just openly said, we have overshot the capacity of the earth to support humanity and our civilization. The carrying capacity of the earth is its ability to support us and indeed all life on this planet. It's all about sustainability. And according to some of these thinkers, we're there. We're living on borrowed time. And of course, the main thing that was not included in that early model was, guess what? The ability to live off-world, the ability of humanity and civilization to expand into a larger ecosystem called the solar system. And that's what we're about. We're about the carrying capacity of this larger solar ecosystem. So back in 72, the modeling that was done, it was a system dynamics view. And here are 2 pages from, I believe, one of those books. Am I right, Greg? Is this one of the
original Limits to Growth? Yeah, and that's a copy of the book, and it's the centerpiece actually of the diagram from that.
So you look at that and you can see it's complicated, but it's built from a very small number of variables. And you can see really that there's a lot of interactivity and trade-offs here. And here are the factors that they really focused on. Population, of course, population growth, availability of resources, pollution, food per capita, and industrial output per capita. Once again, these are interactive, as I talked about earlier with the SDGs. As population grows, it puts more pressure on resources. As resources are used more heavily, we have more what they call pollution. We, of course, are looking at global warming issues like that. So a fairly complicated and interesting model can be built out of a very few factors. Now, as we go along here, back in the 70s, it really came down to 2 different perspectives. One was, what do we do about these limits to growth? And this was from the point of view of if we stay on planet Earth. Nobody really talked in those days about leaving. On the other hand, there's somebody many of you know, Gerard K. O'Neill. He took seriously this study and he said, well, the only way to survive is going to be to put very significant constraints on humanity, on our innovation, on our curiosity, indeed on our growth, on our evolution. And he came up with the idea of the high frontier, or of humanity expanding off of planet Earth and building self-sustaining habitats at the Lagrange points between the Earth and the Moon. So I'm just going to play 2 short clips showing the difference in these 2 perspectives, which all really emerged in the 70s.
What was the real message of limits to growth? The human ecological footprint cannot continue to grow at the rate seen from 1900 to 1972, for more than 100 years from 1972. It is possible, and even likely, that the human ecological footprint will overshoot the sustainable limits, equals the carrying capacity, of planet Earth. Once sustainable limits have been overshot, contraction is unavoidable. overshoot can be avoided through forward-looking global policy. It is important to act as soon as possible. In 1972, that was by 1975. Summing up, the fundamental message of limits to growth, global society is likely to overshoot and then be forced to decline or collapse because of significant reaction delays in the global economy, caused by the time society needs to identify and accept global limits, by the institutional delays involved in decision-making, and by the time it needs to show results once action has been taken.
Kind of a gloomy view, I would say. Now, again, O'Neill he agreed pretty much with that view, but he came up with an answer. And as you listen to him in this film, The High Frontier, or the trailer for it, pay attention toward the end, because one thing he did do, and his artist friends did do, was come up with an image of what these new space communities would look like.
And it's wait.
All right.
We Earthlings have always been an adventuring people. We've always looked to a frontier to give us new opportunity, free rein to our sense of enterprise. The frontier enriched us, generating new wealth, but it also gave us new ideas, new institutions, and new ways of living. Today, the colonization of space offers us a new, limitless frontier. It's bountiful, it's friendly, and it's waiting for us.
We didn't get the audio on that last half.
So two rather different emotional perspectives on the future. What
was the real message of...
Well, let's get beyond that. Now, the human space program is now on the scene to pick up where Club of Rome left off, and to take into account some of Jerry's ideas, but a lot of other futurist ideas. And the human space program grew out of my work on the overview. In fact, actually, it was in the last chapter of the first edition of my book in 1987. And our purpose is to be a central project, which means a long-term project that involves many people, the best we've got on Earth, we hope, to ensure the sustainable, inclusive, and ethical evolution of the solar ecosystem. There are three main components. One is task forces that will look at the critical issues as we move off of Earth, a repository of knowledge that the task forces and others will use to create a blueprint for this evolution, and then our simulation model. And the simulation model will play out alternative futures. It'll test the assumptions of our blueprint. It'll play a very big role in our work but it's also going to be highly relevant eventually to the SDGs. So here's a way to perceive it. Again, credit to Greg for this. Right now, here we are on the left, and it's what we call biosphere prime, or Earth, or Terra. And you see the 5 systems or subsystems there that we are thinking about. It goes right back to Club of Rome days. Then we move over and we expand out to surface biospheres, planetary and lunar enclosures. What does that mean? Moon and Mars. You know, we're beginning to move off of the first biosphere and into a larger world or domain. Cosmospheres, by that we mean O'Neill type communities, islands in space, and then eventually outward until humanity is in the entire Solarian ecosystem. What we're working on right now is modeling what's going to happen as that occurs and if it occurs. So we use the term large-scale space migration, or LSSM, and we talk about, for example, using systems dynamics to look at a perspective on carbon dioxide on the Earth. Looking at what is the impact of what we're talking about on CO2, which of course we know is critical in terms of climate change and global warming. Obviously, we can't get into it here, but just to give you a sense of what we're talking about, here is one graphic showing how the model works and the different interactions that are there. It's built on an existing climate change model, which comes from Ventana Systems, with whom we have an MOU to help us build this model. They were founded in 1985, and I don't know if I mentioned this, but David and Laura worked on the original world model that I just talked about a little while ago. So we've got this continuity going back to the 70s to today, and Ventana has continued to apply these simulation models to real world problems in business, economics, and engineering. Modeling reveals all the possible behaviors of a system. And when you can see that happening dynamically, you can see threats and opportunities, and you can go beyond academically seeing what's going to happen. And you can look at, say, for example, what would be the optimal rate of human migration off-world? You can actually not just predict the future, but you can begin to shape it, taking in as many variables as you can. And here we have a view of an early space migration. Again, we don't have the time or the space here to get into what we're looking at. But for example, over here on the left, there's a box called Space Community Population. And we can look at that in relation to the terrestrial population. Obviously, as the terrestrial population decreases, the space community population will grow. So we're beginning to do work on not only modeling the interactions on planet Earth or on Terra, but beginning to look more broadly at the interactions between off-worlders, if you will, and those who remain here on Earth. Now, there are a lot of ways, again, this is all perspective. There are a lot of ways to see how this works. here we're zeroing in on a relationship between population and temperature change on Earth. And over on the far left, we have what we call sliders. This is how we make changes in our assumptions. And for example, there's an assumption about the reduction in CO2 in the Earth's atmosphere as people migrate. We have a migration growth rate, and we have a start date for migration. So as we change the sliders, you will see the charts begin to change. And here's a short recording that explains how that works. A model like ours can be used to investigate the implications of making changes in the assumptions of the model. In this case, we can vary the factors that control the rate, timing, and scale of people migrating off-world and the resulting impact on the temperature of the Earth, or global warming. The baseline shows that natural factors are expected to limit the Earth's population to about 9 billion, which is by most estimates too high. That is shown on the left. On the right, we can see the anticipated average temperature as part of the baseline, and that is also too high. But we can change our assumptions. For example, let's suppose people begin migrating off of the planet in 2025 at a higher rate. We illustrate this opportunity with the slider on the left. There, we can begin to see the impact not only on Earth's population, which is shown by the blue line, but also the growth in off-planet population, which is seen with the red line. And we can also begin to see how that has an impact on temperature change as that line begins to diminish in its height. This could be seen as an impact of SDG 18, space for all. If space is opened up to everyone and people begin taking the opportunity, they could have a direct impact on global warming. This is a simplified example that illustrates how our approach with our model can be used to investigate the many different aspects of moving human civilization into the solar ecosystem and the sensitivity of the answers to many variables. I want to make a couple of points about this recording. Number one, notice I said moving human civilization into the solar ecosystem. I didn't say moving off the Earth. The Earth is part of the solar ecosystem. And so we're just talking about moving into that larger space. And one of the things that's preventing us is just the way we think about it. We think about abandoning Earth. We're not talking about that. We're talking about a larger range for humanity and civilization in which to exist, which in our view, and based on our model, we believe that will improve life on Earth. Okay. The other thing I want to note is that word change assumptions, that's really important. So instead of two groups of people who think they're on different sides arguing about factors, you can set up our model and you can just change the assumptions. So if an environmentalist who thinks we should stay on the Earth and not use resources elsewhere has different assumptions, they can put them in. If a hardcore space advocate wants to change the assumptions, they can too. And people can come together to build this model. It's common ground. I think I'm going to have to change the view on the next slide if it's the one I think it is. And so I'll have to go out of full screen mode. But if it's the one I think it is, it's the last one. And it presents a new perspective by a recent astronaut, commercial astronaut named Sarah Sabri, who I believe explodes this idea of a dichotomy between Earth and space. That's a very important part of our perspective.
A model.
Oh, sorry, wrong one. Well, we'll get to it in a minute. This is the scope of our model. Population under the Terra systems is the growth and dynamics of humans. Resources, finite substances, fossil fuels with which we're familiar. Pollution, the environment, we're all aware of that. Food, how is land used? How is food distributed? And then industry, the economic activities, material production, and technology. Over here, we move over to Solarian thinking. And here we just have a very different view of the same factors. Now we're starting to talk about migration, and we're starting to talk about population within new space communities. Resources now include lunar resources, asteroids, and other capabilities that we don't have on Earth. We still have to think about pollution because we have to think about orbital debris and issues like that. Food, we start to learn something about growing food in closed environments. And then we continue to have industry, and we begin to see the space communities trading with Earth. And we're going to learn a lot about AI and robotics because we're going to need their help in building these new habitats. Moving on.
Is there any way
This
to
is what I was
summarize?
talking about before. So this is my interview with Sarah Sabri. I had interviewed her before her trip, and I interviewed her after. And in this sequence, I asked her, what did she learn when she went on her Blue Origin flight?
Is there any way to summarize briefly what you think changed?
Yeah, I think so. I think one of the biggest things for me was the lack of separation between Earth and space. And because we've always used the terms space and Earth kind of separate from each other. And we always thought, okay, we're doing things on Earth here, and then like there are certain things that are going to be done for space. But for me, when I was up there, I realized that there's no actual separation between the two. The Earth is just a continuation of it, and we're just a part of this much bigger thing. And that, to me, when that clicked, it just like was, oh, like it makes sense why we're doing what we're doing. It makes sense for us to need to explore it. It makes sense for us to need to understand more of it because it is us. We are it. And that was the biggest thing for me. And I think I was more on the side of looking towards the outside. Like I felt this connection between Earth and space more than anything. It just felt so part of one another that it was so hard. It's so hard for me to separate the two now. It's just, I think that was the most overwhelming feeling that I felt from this whole experience.
If only we could buy a ticket on Blue Origin for the Secretary General of the UN. What a difference that would make. All right. So that is our presentation, folks, for the human space program and for our model. What I'd like to do, if you'll indulge me for 10 minutes, I'd like to let Stan and Greg and Kevin comment, because this is an iterative process. We've been working on this presentation for quite a while. And usually I make a presentation and then they tell me, well, I think we ought to have this here and we ought to have that over there. And we go through and debrief on it. So I'd like to just do a little debrief and see what my colleagues have to add, and then we'll open it up to a larger Q&A, if that's okay with you all.
May I introduce quickly Bernard Foying? He's our president. Hello, welcome.
Hello, yes, thanks. It was great to hear you and to join in. I am now attending our moon base that we have moved to France, and we plan to bring it back to the Netherlands. But yes, I have some questions, but I'll let yes, Kevin and Greg
Yes.
first go
And I
through.
also would like to welcome Gregory Barr. He entered a little bit later, but he was introduced to our audience already. Okay, welcome. So I give you back the floor, Frank, and yeah.
Comments, my friends. What do we need to add?
Greg, you want to throw anything on there?
Please go ahead.
Whoever wants to go first. Free for all.
Let me just reiterate a couple of major points. First of all, the systems dynamics is a very powerful tool. This kind of computer modeling is getting much more powerful than it was in the 70s. It's been developed quite effectively, and we have a great and talented team that knows how to use it to get insights from very complex interactive situations. We're taking on a very big challenge here to model what it's going to look like to move human civilization into space. We think we have the capabilities and the tools to do that. And by virtue of using this tool to look at different assumptions, different conditions, we can focus on different problems and maybe learn things about how that migration will go that may not otherwise be obvious. So we're really excited about using the tool to develop new perspectives on how space migration, that is the movement of civilization, humans, robots, everything, into space, will impact the quality of human life, both on Earth and elsewhere. The second point I want to make is that this is a tool that has many more potentials than we'll be able to realize. That is a big problem. So where we focus our efforts and which questions, excuse me, we address initially is going to be a collective decision as we grow forward and see where the resources are, what are the interesting topics. We could model the use of asteroidal resources. We could model manufacturing in space. We can model the impact of solar power satellites. We could model small groups of people living off the Earth to do science, to develop new capabilities. Anything we can imagine can be, in fact, modeled, and by using these models, get new insights about what otherwise is mostly just in the realm of science fiction right now, and a lot of conjecture. All right, that's why I'm excited about this powerful tool that the human space program would like to develop. Greg, over to you.
Well, Stan, thank you. And, I think you really have said everything that I could say about the use of modeling and system dynamics. As a person who has spent 15 years of my career doing financial modeling for fairly large government agencies using activity-based costing, one of the tools we used in that technique of activity-based costing, which is understanding what the true cost of your products and services are, was the system dynamics. In other words, in order to try to get at the actual cost of what people were doing to produce a service in the government context, because activity-based costing came out of manufacturing. And as you can imagine, producing a bottle of Coca-Cola is pretty straightforward. You know what all your materials are, you know what people are doing on the assembly line, and you can do the calculation pretty straightforward. But when you try to apply that to like services, for instance, say giving out loans, that's a little bit more complex. And we used to bring in system dynamics to help us understand that kind of a shift of applying a good solid methodology for data into getting results that you could rely on. And it's very important. So when we talk about these elements or factors that go into the stocks and flows of a system dynamics model, once you get the appropriate relationships established, you have a fairly high degree of confidence in what the model is trying to tell you. And I want to just emphasize briefly, if you are not familiar with limits to growth and don't want to go all the way back 50 years to figure out what happened back then, I highly recommend the Beyond Limits 50-year retrospective, which is an anthology of a number of papers of people who participated and people who today are looking at that model and what it told us. And the most amazing thing about it is that there really isn't much that the model didn't predict that has happened. So, that is really kind of a testimonial to how strong such a model can be. And while it may sound really, really complex to execute on it, it is achievable to put the right, elements into it, the right factors into it. And I also want to think that, it's not really a coincidence that the picture, well, thank you, Frank, for showing the blue marble behind you. When that picture came out in the late 60s, that only 4 or 5 years later, the limits to growth worldview was created. And we're kind of really at the same point in a way, in that, everything that we are trying to achieve with sustainable development goals, with a global perspective, which is seemingly so hard to achieve, is truly the right path, the right road to go down. And adding the dimension of space as a component of inclusiveness in that is really, I think, an essential element to trying to make sure that we have the right factors, that we have the full perspective, and we take that solar ecosystem perspective and bring that to bear and try to find the data that we need for that perspective. That's what I would.
Oh, thanks, Greg. Kevin, quick comment before we turn it over to SRI.
Yes, I'll just mention about space environmentalism and economic sustainability, and how the 17 goals and the 18th goals and this model could really show and help people understand that interaction, and sort of some of the issues I think that we can address with this model, looking at sustainability and the problem, that the corporate body faces on the planet, which it really looks at costs. And as I've written here, corporate civil liability is an issue. And knowing that sustainability costs are currently a negative externality, if the companies aren't forced to absorb those costs, then they'll continue to behave in that way that they've behaved, which has caused many of the impacts to many of the sustainability development goals that we're trying to overcome. So we have that issue, but we have also a maritime law and the understanding of how our ocean ties all our continents together. And so if we think of how we will behave as nation states, or how nation states will possibly change their behavior, and we come to some kind of international legal standards for operator behavior, given that we understand how this ocean planet works, maybe we'll be able to make the change where we're using space in a more responsible way, because cost avoidance is quantifiable. And I believe that, susceptibility to liability claims are something that big corporations care about, because the market is a driver, and loss of assets can mean loss of capacity and therefore loss of market share. So there are economic incentives to help change behavior. And I think if we can help them see that, that will be really powerful. That's it.
Thank you, Kevin. So we really appreciate the opportunity to share all this with you, and we turn it back to you, Sabine.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. It was really an interesting lecture, and thank you for your comments. And I would like to give the floor to Bernard because he indicated that he has some questions.
Yeah. So I have a question because there's a parallel with, our carbon footprint by using aviation now. It's part of our daily life, and we are part of the population that is making a large use, much above the average of the population. The tens of tons of CO2. And my question is, did you work out what is the environment footprint of sending us, migrating into space? I plan to go to space in 2 years, a bit like Sarah in a suborbital flight. And I'm asked, why you and why what is the carbon footprint of sending somebody in space? And what is the fraction of us that it is sustainable to have in space? So do you have some numbers for that we have to reflect, and we have to see the same way that we try to develop aviation with a lower environment aspect. So technology will help us, but at the moment, what is the carbon footprint of an astronaut? And how many of us can we afford to have in space at the same time?
I want to say we're working on that. And one thing I didn't really mention is our model is not complete. I showed you parts of it. We are talking, for example, we are gathering that data, Bernard, and we've been working with a associate professor at Clemson who really has done a lot of work on that. So we aren't there yet, but we're getting there. And Greg, Kevin, Stan, want to comment on that?
I would just say, relative to the other forms of carbon dioxide production that humans indulge in, automobiles, for instance, is one example, but even the creation of energy through using of fossil fuels. From my recollection, when we talked with a professor at Clemson, whose name I can't remember right now, but who's doing the studies on all the different types of rockets and even the aircraft that produce this, that total sum seemed negligible compared to the other forms of emissions. So I think
this is for the current number of astronauts.
Well,
now,
but
if we put
no, it was for the whole. It was a whole history of since rocketry began, that the whole output of that use of fuel, that type of fuel, was projected, and it's not a lot. And even if you start talking, you would have to start talking really about millions of people going off Earth to see a major impact. And I think one of the biggest challenges, and one of the things that a model would point towards, is to explore alternative means of people going off into space. But I also want to stress that, again, a space population, once it's self-sustainable out there, wouldn't necessarily all come from Earth. That's one thing. And then the fact of the ability to produce materials from off-Earth sources like asteroids, it could be a very big offsetting factor involved in the future of how many people can be sustained in space. So those are things that I would definitely want to make sure we incorporate.
And one other topic that Space Maintenance is worried is even with this zero debris charter, okay, we prevent collision and so on, but we contaminate.
Can you speak a little bit more louder, because
we contaminate the atmosphere. So we should keep all this stuff in space. We need to recycle everything that we send to space. That's one motive that we think for the next generation of sustainability.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll add one thing to Bernard's question. So as Frank and Greg mentioned, we are working with a group who's doing the modeling around the upmass atmospheric impact from the energy required to move rockets up. And obviously, as the cadence of SpaceX and Starship and others like that continue, we need to model that to know what it costs to get that mass up. And another project that I'm also working on is how much does 1,000 or 2,000 people require to eat? So the farming capacity in space. And so there's that, but there's all the inputs and outputs like all of our models look at, which are, as Greg mentioned, the flows of the input, the output, and the stocks and flows to sustain that human in space with oxygen and what have you, water and energy. So yeah, all that needs to be modeled, and we can get to that. Absolutely.
And people don't only need to eat, they only need to take shower, and so the body hygiene is also very important. And also they need to entertain somehow. It's often forgotten. I'm here for speaking for the art. And I think it's very important that we have also this in our view and our mind, because people cannot live in a sterile environment. They can do it for a certain time, short time, like at ISS, but even there they have maybe some music or some movies, but they need more to entertain, and not only, they are not machines like working only. Yeah. So this has to be also in your calculation, and maybe we will reproduce in space. We will get children, and then we have to think how we educate our children, medicine, and so many factors. Also, it's if we want to grow in space, then we have to think about this too. Adriano?
Yes, thank you very much. Okay, first of all, let me make my great compliments for giving birth to this piece of software that's very important for everything we are making, we are trying to make on this planet. So let me say that I started my philosophical reflection from the same point, from the Club of Rome and the limits to growth, and I started to think about going over the limits in the 80s. And when I created my first webzine, was called Technologies of the Frontier. One of the goals was to build a simulation tool like the one you are doing. So I'm very happy that I found
Come aboard.
It's early.
Someone who did the work already.
However, I have several notes that I have taken during the presentation, and so first of all, I think you put inside the simulation all the relevant variables: the population, pollution, industry, and several others linked to the 17 SDGs, of course, because they are all related to these variables. And I believe, the model is dynamic, so it would not be a big work to add a variable, but because I think that energy is something that is to be considered, because especially because energy is nowadays the real critical thing as for sustainability. I mean, the so-called green transition was based on the assumption that energy demand would decrease, because people will understand that we are producing too much pollution, etc., climate change, and so on. So demand will decrease. But what happened? The demand of energy is not decreasing, is skyrocketing, because we have some new technologies that are adding to the old ones. And I'm talking about artificial intelligence, the big data servers, the electronic money, the electrical mobility, and all of these things are making the demand of energy on Earth increasing at a very, very big rate, very much more than what it was expected. And what it happens that now the renewables, the sources of energy, are growing, but the fossil are growing too. And the two of them together cannot satisfy the demand of energy. So I think this is something definitely to be introduced in the model, and to understand how in 30 years, let's say in 30 years, but first of all, we take 2030 as a symbolic date. However, we could try to understand in 2030 and following 20 years more, what it will happen in two cases. The world remain closed, so we try to respond to this demand, increasing demand of energy in the closed world, or the world is open. We start civilian space development and everything will change. But how? No, so this is my first. Well, I'm sure that you are already thinking about energy, because we cannot think about a model, a simulation model, without thinking about energy. However, yeah, I'm very, very curious, and also would like to contribute somehow to this study and so on. Second question, the simulator, is it online?
Wait a moment, someone wanted to answer to the first question.
Okay. Yeah. If you want, I give you all of my questions together. If not, I will.
No, better one by one.
Okay. Good.
Someone wants to answer this question? Or?
Well, the beauty of any model is that you can add the basic factors, and you can add data, and you can change assumptions. So I think you've made a pretty compelling argument for adding energy, and so I think we'll definitely take that into consideration. And I don't want to speak for the team, but I think it's pretty obvious. And Stan in particular has been very interested in putting into the model the potential impact of space-based solar power. And if we're going to do that, we need to take into account energy in general, I think. Other thoughts?
I just want to say that for Adriano, yesterday, actually, in the Post, Washington Post, there was an article about the complaints of the citizens in Virginia, nearby here, where the information technology has been building large data centers, and they've been attracting that as a potential economic benefit. But now suddenly they realize that the cost of electricity for all the residents around the area is increasing substantially. And they're now of two minds of whether this is a benefit or a cost in the long run. And that's exactly the kinds of things that stocks and flows show you based on assumptions. So you take extreme cases and you play them out and you see where it goes. But I would also then want to immediately add that, space is a place where you can have a lot of energy input from the sun. You can do heat dissipation would be your biggest problem, to solve. But you could have, all your computing power in space, and supporting it with, energy systems in space, and then just sending information back to Earth. And so that's another, way that the whole thing can play out if you take into account the different spheres that you have available to you.
Totally agree with you. And I also think that solar power in space should be used primarily to feed space clients, not to be beamed down on Earth, because beaming more energy on Earth will just increase the pressure, let me say, on the planet. So I'm not sure it's a good thing to beam energy from space to Earth, but it will be a very good thing to make to move the big computational systems in orbit. Yes, that this will be definitely maybe the first step to space industrialization, together with recovering and reusing space debris and so on. So yeah, however, Yes. Can I go on with my second question?
Yes.
Okay. So this is a technical question. The simulator, is it online? Can we play with it from a remote?
No, it's not currently. It's not a web application yet. It's still a proof of concept.
Okay.
The simulator, yeah, the simulator is something that is essentially resident with Ventana Systems. We ourselves are beginning to work with it, learn from it. And so as Kevin said, at this point, it's not a web application. And, over time, we'll see where it evolves.
But it would be a good thing because if you have many people developing it and they have other ideas and the development could be faster. Yeah.
Yeah.
So let me make the point here that if it's not obvious by now, I'll be clear, the model, the simulation does not exist yet. Only small parts of it, as Frank illustrated, exist to demonstrate the principle. But the kind of tool that needs to be developed does not yet exist. And so part of the reason of bringing this communication, this presentation to you and to this group is we need resources to be able to size the project, seeing how much resources can be massed so we can set some priorities about what should be modeled and then turn the team loose to go do the modeling and do the simulations so we can really demonstrate the utility. Right now, it's a concept primarily, not an operational system. But Adriano caught on immediately. It's a very powerful idea if we can make it happen.
One more technical question, please. Did you use some commercial kernel or did you develop the software yourself? Everything?
It's from Ventana Systems, the original team that came out of the Club of Rome Limits to Growth work at MIT. It's the original kernel that comes from that has built the I'm forgetting the climate model that's used throughout. What's it called? Yeah.
Okay.
What is it?
Okay, my last or maybe last question. Would it be possible to think about playing with different models? I take the, let me say, the two main different views about space development. The Jeff Bezos plan, that is the cislunar economy and logistic organization, one side, and the Elon Musk view to make first a city on Mars, and is also my friend Bob Zabrin view, if you like, and so it would be very much interesting to make two different simulations using these two programs, two strategies, let me say.
Yeah.
Developing first the moon and the cislunar space, or developing or go to Mars and founding a city over there. And it would be interesting to see what would be the effects on all the other variables, no? Population, industry, and so on. Most of all, I think, I think that developing dichotomic simulations would be interesting to compare different things. I mean, if we can try to understand, if we don't go outside, if we don't open the world, what will happen to all the variables in 30 years, and what will happen if we open the world and we go outside, starting to reusing the debris to produce fuel in space, to make moon mining and asteroid mining and so on. What will be the impact of these industrial lines of development on the rest, including what Bernard was saying before, the footprint of a massive space travel, let me say, that will launch from Earth. Of course, from the next decades, we have to think that if Starship is a good example. If Starship works and will make several launches per day, that there will be a lot of CO2 from space launches. But at this point, it would be interesting to make a comparison between what would be the cost, the global cost, not only the environmental cost, but the economical, social, and environmental costs if we don't do that. It could be that at the end we have to choose what is the minor damage, let me say, between damages. Because the point is that we started too late. We are 50 years late in the civilian space development.
Yes.
And now we will pay for that. We will pay for that in some states. Sorry.
I would like to add a third model, space habitat. And as far as I know, Chinese are working on this, but maybe we could compare this with the two models too. So a third model. So this I wanted to add only.
I think one of the most exciting aspects of the model is that you could take specific scenarios like the Bezos vision versus the Musk vision, or the two in combination, and look at the impact on the Earth, which of the two will produce more profoundly positive life off-world. That's the point. And as Stan pointed out, and thank you, Stan, I probably gave a pretty rosy picture of what we've got. We need resources to finish this. And as Stan said, the reason we're out here talking about the model in its early stages, we hope to attract support financially so that we can get to the point where we can show you something far more complete. There's no doubt it can be done. We've got the people that did it 50 years ago. They can do it again. I can't do it, but they can. And so I think these are exciting times. And I will also add one final point. This model can show what happens over time. One of my complaints about what's going on this particular spaceship we call Earth, we don't have any urgency about what we're all talking about. This is not a nice thing to do. This is very important to do. And I think we need to get that urgency. And if we thought this was an existential threat, that it would be an existential threat to humanity to stay here and not expand into a larger ecosystem, cost wouldn't be a problem. Cost is not a problem if it's significant enough. The problem is not cost. It's that the significance of it is not clear to the global population.
Yeah.
I have also some questions from the chat. I'm just seeing. Sorry, but it didn't move here. I also would like to welcome people from France watching and from Spain. Anna is asking, depending on the climate conditions, she can envision real estate on Earth becoming highly valued in the Solarian ecosystem future. Would it make sense to give economic incentives to migrate?
I'd let somebody else answer that. I say yes, but.
Other opinions?
I've seen enough dystopian visions in films like Blade Runner where they're trying to attract people to come off the Earth and go work in the off-world planets in whatever context they are projecting there. My feeling is that there is the potential for humans to create ideal environments in space if they learn how to control closed environments. And I think those would, by nature, become attractive. I don't agree that it's necessarily, a dystopian view, that it's going to be overly industrial or necessarily, dark and sort of mind-crushing kind of work. Again, it's dependent on our ability to implement robotic support and robotic manufacturing and automation, and also, the ability to extract everything that we need from near-Earth objects and other asteroids that would provide for a very, very broad capability. There's a lot of material in our solar system that is available to us without us really changing that environment necessarily, but just modifying it for our continued existence. And I think that would be attractive enough to.
Anna also is saying she totally agrees with Adriano modeling the long-term cost of not progressing the civilian expansion into space as a powerful framework to represent the world. And Cecilia is saying, so she agrees with me, that we are humans and not machines, and we need to work with a machine, but life lives a life as humans in the future environment. In this regard, before I come to the last question, I have another question. We had many lectures here about food production in space and also about artificial meat, but I think animals to have pets in space is also very important. I don't know if there do exist experience. Okay, they sent Laika into space, but we know what happened with this dog. But we know that dogs or cats can be very calming for humans. So I don't know if there do exist experiments already or models how it would be to take pets into space or animals or other animals to eat them. But we are meat eater, beef eater.
It's a great question. Yeah. I've talked about this with numerous people in numerous panels. We have no real data that I've seen about the impact of pets on human behavior. In
space.
I don't know how to say it, but civilizing impact of dogs and cats and other animals on humans. And when I think about a future of humanity off-world, it bothers me a lot. And yet, you've got to think about, what are they going to eat? How are they going to survive? How are they going to be accommodated? What is the cost? Again, I hate to say it, it could be modeled. We can model it. But I do think it's being brought up frequently, and I don't think it's getting the attention it needs.
Yes. And the last question from Dinis Afonso Rivero. Self-replication robots, how to model them? Maybe an artistic precursor could be. Could be Conway's Game of Life spaceship gun video. So, someone wants to make a remark about this?
I'm not sure what the question.
Go ahead, Greg.
No, I was wondering, I couldn't understand what the question was about that.
Yeah, maybe it was a remark, more or less, yeah.
But
how to model self-replicating robots.
A robot. But before that, I don't mind to have each of us with an avatar on the moon. We could have, and we can start already on two planets at the same time.
I don't think we can. I personally don't think. I personally think we need to go big or go home, as I put it. We need large-scale space migration. to happen. And without AI-enabled robots, we're not going to be able to do it.
Yes, I agree with you.
We're too fragile. We need their help. And so we should stop worrying about whether they're going to take over the earth, and we should get them to work at moving us and our industry into a larger ecosystem. And I have a dog here who wants to say something about pets.
Moondog.
Moondog? Moondog is here.
That's
Yes,
cool.
the human space program would be nowhere without Maisie Dobbs.
Dogs, also I think it is important, and they have become family members in the meanwhile, and yeah, yeah, also I think it is important.
I just want a small thing to these considerations about animals and so on. I think not only animals are important, but also the vegetables are important. We need to reproduce the earth biome because that is what we need for living in space. And so if we are serious and we want really to change paradigm from exploration to living to space settlement, we need to give more attention to the vegetable life in the habitats.
I'd love to comment on that.
Yeah, to have green habitats, not iron cages, let me say. So we cannot live in iron cages. Yeah.
Yes, we need plants and animals. And
yes, plants and animals.
We need plants and animals, and we need plants that produce oxygen. And just like we can all have mother's tongue in our corner of our house, which produces oxygen, one of the projects I'm also helping down at the Space Research Lab at the University of Austin with a company called GeoGrow. Their technology actually produces larger yields due to gravity than we have here on Earth. And it's soil-based. It's not hydroponic. And if you've eaten the difference between hydroponic and soil, you know that tomato and that vegetable and that fruit taste a lot better from soil. And not only that, they have a technology partner out of Australia that their technology produces more soil and humus, and that produces oxygen. And that's exactly what you want. You want a virtuous cycle of bigger yield, more resilient, and you want oxygen and soil production. You do not want dirt. Dirt is dead, soil is alive. And so there's some really exciting stuff happening in that area. So I'm 100% with you. I love their technology because it's soil-based, not drip hydroponic.
Yeah. And the beautiful surround also. Let's not forget, we need beauty. We need beauty, not
beauty. Absolutely.
Things, boring things. No, we need beauty and nice design and all this kind of thing.
Actually, on this topic of growing plants, science is also very helpful. For instance, we did experiments 15 years ago using moon soil, which is very poor to grow anything. But together with some Dutch and Ukrainian scientists, we injected some special bacteria in the soil that did all the work to extract all the elements out of the soil. And then we produced a plant. Actually, the first one was a flower, a French marigold, that can be used as a first generation plant. So using also a latest biotechnology, you can really use the soil much more efficiently, and then really create a whole new biome adapted to the resource that you have. And indeed, we need to have a whole environment around us on the moon.
Yeah. And finally, I wanted to say, as we are talking about space for all, Bernard is preparing, and may I talk about this?
Yes, you can.
Space for All Exploration Gallery, and I put in the background a picture I'm applying with for this exploration gallery, because I think to Space for All there belongs more. We have to make it fit for disabled people, for people, smaller people. If you think of families, we have to think of children and of older people. And maybe it will be that at the beginning we have some family vacation in space. Let us dream about this, dream big. If you don't dream, we will not reach the goal. And who doesn't want to be in space one day? If we could make it possible, I would go. Yeah, so in any case, also we have to think of many things about this. But I thank you very, very much for being
or
here
maybe
this year.
just on this topic of space for all exploration Gary,
Yeah.
we dream big, but we start small. So we launch next year in June a gallery with 40 artifacts. 20 of them are reserved for space for all partners, a space for all SDG 18 partners, and then you have some for artists and some for scientists, showing that we bring a diversity of message to space. So we launch it. It goes in orbit, a few orbit, and come back as a demo experiment. And the follow-up will be to the moon. But next year we launch with SpaceX a very miniature gallery, and so we are happy to dedicate some slot, one for Space Renaissance, one for Space for All SDG 18. We have a few slots left. So if you want to sponsor a slot as well, which include all these elements, the Space for All, the science, the art, and the expansion to space, we can still include them until mid-November.
By the way, my music artwork is almost ready.
Good.
And if you want, I can give you a quick preview now.
Very good.
We made a recording with my group, my Moonwalkers Jazz Band, and I can make you run here 10 seconds. Can you hear it?
Yes. The audio is very bad, but we get an idea.
Yeah.
We are all very,
It's very
very
bad.
excited about this project.
Yes, also one on this spot, we can bring music, but we'll also send them a SanDisk. So we can also send some digital information. It will fly to space and come back. So just for the symbol, I'd like also to collect a few text or, a document for some of you, and then we can put it on this chip that will fly to space and back.
This is moving ahead. The title is Moving Ahead. And yes, I can show you the spreadsheet. Just a moment. Okay. Okay, this is the spreadsheet. You see it?
Yes.
There is a Renaissance symbol is composed by me and the Moonwalkers Jazz Band. And this is the music, if somebody wants to play it. Yeah. Okay.
Okay, when you share, then I will share my can you give me stop sharing, then I show my artwork too. Wait, I hope I have it here open. Moment, I have to open it now first. Moment. Just a second. Space for exploration gallery. Moment, I have to open it first. And just a second. So. So, moment. I have to moment. And here it is here. You can see it? Moment. No, it's not seen, no? Moment. So. Yeah, no. It should be seen. So, and you can see it's a space, a room, space for all, and you see the room leads to this into the space, and you see people like converting into astronauts, and they are going there and yeah, going in all directions into space. So this was my idea, and you see smaller people, adults, and also disabled, and I put them in different colors so to make clear that it's for all. Also, so, and I think with this I could show it. And you see our logo here in the background and Itaku's logo too. So yeah.
Quite interesting.
Splendid.
Great work.
Thank you.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned disabled people, because we believe that gravity, as I think everyone on this call is a bit in the elder population, we will all enjoy a little bit lightness of gravity. We talk
Yes,
about that frequently.
Yes, I was thinking, and from Ascadia, what's the name of this man? And we had him very often here for or once for a webinar, and he wants to go to space because of this, because of spin needs to be lightened by non-gravity, and this is very nice. So, thank you everyone for watching us, for staying with us such a long time. We had a really, really long and interesting webinar. Thank you.
Can I ask one final question or make a point? And that is very simply that we really appreciate the time you've given us to explain what this project could be. It's a great way to use this power that Frank described, the overview effect, getting the big picture, the big perspective, and seeing how it all fits together is what we're trying to do. But it's not complete until we get your feedback. What is the best way for your audience and your viewers to get their impressions, questions, suggestions, ideas, and passionate, maybe they want to participate in this kind of project? What's the best way to get feedback from the people that are watching this program right now? Can they contact you? Can they contact Adriano and pass information, maybe ideas, questions, suggestions back to us? Because it's got to be more than us broadcasting out. We need to have feedback from smart, talented, passionate
Let's get the ball rolling.
Yes,
absolutely, absolutely.
We will forward this video that will remain on YouTube, so we can spread the message during the next weeks on our social channels, on Google group, on Facebook, on Twitter, everywhere, and asking people to watch this video and come up with ideas for implementing the model more.
Yes, and I can spread it in our art group. We have a Space Renaissance art group, so maybe some artists wants to join this idea too.
Absolutely. Our human space program is a big family of activities. This is right in the center, but there are many other groups.
I hope sooner or later to come to you where the model is, and to have the possibility to play a little bit with it.
We'd love to have you do that.
Hopefully sooner, yeah.
Ventana. Ventana. Yeah, why not?
Be great.
We try.
Okay, thank you, Stan, Greg, thank you, Kevin and Frank and Bernard and Adriano for being here with us. Thank you for our audience, to our audience for being here with us. We see us back on the 25th of November with
Arun Okab.
Yes. And I don't know the topic so far, but he will deliver it and we will publish it on our Facebook.
He will present the Kepler Space University. I think you are aware. Yeah, Frank for sure is aware because he is one of the lecturers. that the Kepler Space Institute started this Rhodes to become a fully accredited university to release graduations and so on. So the KSU is working hard to get this goal, and all of us, myself and Frank, are engaged to give lectures to the KSU, and Harun will explain the project of the Kepler Space University, the 25th of November. Okay.
Thank you. This is a very great idea, and thank you, Frank. Also, thank you everyone for being here with us, and we see us back on 25th of November. Have a nice evening, and goodbye. Ad astra.
Goodbye.